Welcome, Nancy Boyd, to Ordinary Visionaries. So glad to have you here.
Very happy to be here. Thank you, Robert.
Now, this is our second interview because the first one, we had some technical difficulties, and so hopefully that won't happen this time. So I'm glad to meet you again and talk about how you are an ordinary visionary. So tell us, how are you an ordinary visionary?
Well, first of all, I think of myself just as an ordinary person. I'm not famous or anything. The books that I have written haven't been published yet. That's a goal of mine, to get them into print, get them into people's hands. But my visionary side has been with me since as long as I can remember. When I first got here, I can remember as a baby looking up at the trees. I was out in the yard. I couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 3-4 months old, I'm guessing, very young, and becoming aware that, wow, this place is really different than wherever I'm from. Like, it got it right away. That
you remember that when you were 3 or 4 months? You have memories from back then?
I came in very aware and awake. So I know that that's not very common, but that's just part of who I am. So in the beginning, I have a very clear memory of what it was like from wherever I came from. And it wasn't like this. We had, it was much more filled with light and love. That's the only way I can put it. And the things that happen here don't happen where I'm from, wherever that is. So
that's interesting.
It's like I got born into a hell realm here somehow. Like, this is hell that we're living in now. The kinds of visions that I had early on is, well, since I'm here and I have this knowledge, what can I do with this? How can I assist and facilitate changes to happen around me and within me that are going to make the existence, make living much more like where I'm from, and to even let people know that something like that is possible, because so many times, and the people I encounter and have encountered in my lifetime operate at such a shallow level that they're missing so much. And that's another part of the vision and the message that I think I came here to bring, is that we need to go a little deeper and somehow find ways to let go of and release the shallowness and just the surface matter that really doesn't mean anything to any of us. It's like a pro forma living. We're just going through the motions, and that's not satisfying to anyone.
You know, I studied a lot of spiritual teachings, and one of my first teachers said, we're all asleep. It sort of relates to that. We're dealing with our day-to-day stuff, but we're really not aware of ourselves and the world. Yeah. It's like a waking sleep that we go through. Kind of like that.
It's very much like that.
So, Nancy, let me ask you a bit about your life and your history. What are the things that you've done in your life, and, you know, coming from that sort of vision that you want to make the world a more conscious place?
Yeah, I've been through so much, and even, you know, some of the things that I went through began early because there was going to be friction of my holding a very clear picture of an ideal way to live and be with each other in the world, and not seeing it happen. And so I was very frustrated, wanted to kind of push back against that, and got into trouble early on. And, you know, I came in, I was, let's see, I forget how I put this, but I grew up smart, poor, and outcast, as I would put it, because people didn't know what to do with me, and sometimes they still don't. I seem to, some astrologers have told me since that I have come in like coded with some energy that basically says evolve or die. And that's a very threatening message to some people. That people who are sensitive can feel that. And if that message doesn't resonate, they can, be repelled by it. And so over time, I've learned to try to temper that a little bit, make it a little bit easier to assimilate and take in. Like, look, I'm not going to hurt you.
Give me an example of that in your growing up.
Oh, okay. Like when I went to kindergarten, I learned to read. I was reading the Encyclopedia Britannica when I was 3 years old. I have notations in the margins that of the questions that I wanted to ask.
Okay, now that's interesting.
It is interesting. So when I got to kindergarten, the teachers were trying to teach us the alphabet, learning the letters, and like they do it for all kids. And I said, well, I already do that. I can read. And they said, no, you don't. You're lying. So first I get punished for telling the truth. And so that's one good example. And then they handed me like a third grade book to read. And I was just opened it and just started reading from it. And they got really upset with that because they did not know what to do with me. You're not supposed to, as a teacher looking at your kids are supposed to be like this. And here's what you do with them. And I was not that at all. So they had me sit in the corner for bragging was the next thing that happened. For bragging
so here
about
you
what
are,
I could do.
This gifted child,
Yeah.
And you're punished for it. Lovely.
Punished from every kind of direction for it. And it was much later on that people began to understand that I was gifted in some ways and tried to help me with that. But it took a long while. Most of the time I was really the square peg in the round hole with nobody knowing what in the world to do with me or about me. So I was on my own a lot. I had to create my own ways to relate and try to keep myself safe along the way. So growing up, I grew up in poverty. My father molested me when I was very young.
Oh, wow.
It continued for quite a while. I had a lot of things to heal as a result of growing up. Because also my father, this is not to say anything bad about him, because now as an adult, I understand what happened to him. He was in the war. He came back with what we would now call PTSD. It was never treated. So He had a hard time. Our family, I counted up one time, we moved 27 times before I was 11 years old. So that's a lot of chaos. And
by the time you were what?
11.
So that's
we were constantly moving
2 or 3 times a year.
Just about, yeah.
Why was that? Why did that happen?
Well, my father couldn't hold a job. He had trouble in getting along in the world. And eventually, by the time I reached junior high age, both my parents became teachers. He had enough education and some experience, I guess, and that gave us some stability. But by then, I was already, certain patterns had been formed. So, like I said, I had a lot of healing work to do as an adult, and I have gone through a lot of very, very good therapy, and my spiritual path has helped me. When I got to college, I still had so few social skills. I really did not know how to relate to other people. I had not, you don't form bonds with people when you're just moving constantly. You don't have long enough time to form relationships with other people, with your peers.
Right.
So those were some things that needed healing. But I turned to alcohol because it gave me a way to not worry about things. And I could have.
At what age?
Oh, probably when I was 17, I will say.
Okay.
So, and then I drank for about 12 years, I think, and until I realized that my solution was the problem. It was creating so much problems for me. I didn't realize that I was an alcoholic. Like, nobody in my family drank. There were a lot of problems in my family, but it wasn't alcohol. So I had
nothing. Did your family even know you were drinking, or you were doing it on the sly?
I was doing it on the sly, and I wasn't around them because I had left home as soon as I could get away. Went to college. And in those environments, it looked like that was a way that could help me. It was something that could help me be more socialized and make friends, have relationships, and so forth. But I didn't realize at the time I didn't realize until I got sober that I was an alcoholic. And it required divine intervention to have that happen, by the way. It was a very funny experience that I had. And very ironic. That it's so funny. at the time, I was really at the bottom of my barrel. Like I had gone out to a big city on the West Coast to die because it was the only place I hadn't been, and I thought it was warm and might be a good place to go. I was in such despair. I had no idea of what to do about the dilemmas that I had found myself in and got myself into. So it's ironically the only job I could find in that huge city was as a vocational rehab counselor in a women's alcoholism facility. Right. So, so not
Did
knowing
they know?
anything about that, I was having the same problem that of the people I was going to be dealing with.
And
So,
did they know you were an alcoholic, or
no,
did
not
you
at all.
even know?
I did not even know.
And what was
So,
your degree in?
I had a degree in English, a double major in English and French, so it was nothing related to that. And but
Well,
yeah, the funny part of it was that my drinking patterns weren't like anybody else's either. So that figures that fits for me being so unique. I'm a unicorn. and, um, so I couldn't recognize myself in the things that they say these are what an alcoholic is like, right? This is what alcoholic behavior is like. But the one thing that was I found absolutely true for me is I could never predict what would happen when I took that first drink, and never, ever. I could be happy. I could be anything could happen. And as it turned out, I didn't know until after I was sober a while that I was a blackout drinker. So that means that I was functioning as if everything was normal, but I had no concept. I wasn't conscious at all of it. And later, in like the next day after a party or something, people would be telling me these things that I apparently had done. I had no memory of it. So I thought they were, being really mean to me and lying about me. And it turned out that it's possible that some of the things they were saying were true. I just had no memory of it whatsoever, or no concept of it. I didn't even know what a blackout drinker was, and I had a lot to learn. So that was another part of my
as a
healing
blackout
journey.
drinker,
Yeah.
you're conscious, you're interacting with people, but later on you can't remember. So something in the alcohol.
Well, whatever that is, and I don't understand. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I don't know that thing. I just know there is such a thing as blackout drinking, where you appear to be conscious and awake and functioning as if you were normal, but during that time when you're blacked out, you're not conscious. There's some disconnect.
It's almost like sleepwalking.
It's like very, very much like sleepwalking. You have absolutely no memory of any of it. So,
and that would happen if you just took 2 or 3 drinks or a certain amount.
The funny part is that I used to tell people I only ever had 2 beers. How could this be? But after 2 beers, I would black out. So I could have been drinking all night long and not remember any part of that. So, it was really crazy, and I'm very, very pleased to say that through my higher power and the grace and help of a lot of good people, I've not had to return to that part of life, and I'm so happy for that. I'm grateful for my sobriety. Has been a major part of my healing process, and I needed that so that I could begin to do all the other layers and unwrap all the other things that had happened, and get me to a place where I think I was probably in my mid 40s or 50s, probably I will say, before I was really stable enough to do my real work that I came here to do. Because, well, for all I know, the healing work that I had to do might have been the work that I came here to do too. So,
right. Well, we'll work at the kind of, you first had a job in an alcohol treatment center, and then what other kind of jobs did you have between that time and?
Well, actually,
and then when you were 40 or so.
Yeah, I had, for the most part, been helping small businesses run their businesses. So like an office manager or a bookkeeper, just doing office kinds of work. And as it turns out, I was not well suited to that because I didn't understand until this is another piece of my healing journey. At some point, in my mid 50s, I had a sudden severe attack of multiple sclerosis. And that was just out of the
Really?
blue. I was old for that to happen. And as
Yeah.
I learned later that I had some symptoms prior to that, but they were so mild, it could never have been diagnosed. It's hard to diagnose anyway. But that
Yeah.
year I had all but, I think some 52 symptoms, and I had all but two of them. So it was pretty easy to diagnose and get me into treatment and recovery. And thank goodness I have recovered from that. But after that, then I had the space during that healing moment, that particular time, that I could really re-examine my life. And I had the time and the luxury, if you will, to say, what am I going to do with my life now? Because I had to do something different. I was not going to be able to do the kind of work that I did before. So I went back to, I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to coach training school. I went to what was then called Coach U, and then studied under Thomas Leonard, who was considered probably the founder of coaching industry.
I knew Thomas.
Yeah, you told me that. That's great.
Yeah. In fact, I rented an office from him downtown San Francisco where he started.
Right.
That's where I
So
started my business. So, yeah.
yeah, so we have some intersections there, and you have a little bit of way to know about that. But that changed my life. And during that process, I learned that one of the reasons why I was having trouble, some troubles, or I would say friction with the kind of work that I was doing, was I'm an entrepreneurial person. And the kind of stuff that would happen, that I would be always trying to make things better and show them how they could do these things or that things to earn more money or to take up advantage of opportunities. And you could do this, you could do that, and say, well, that's fine, Nancy, but where are the reports? And I knew that creating those reports was part of my job. I really was not interested in them. My attention and my desires would be to lead me to somewhere else, and which was not what I was there to do. So that understanding also helped me a lot. What this all eventually led me to understand is that everybody comes here with certain things that they're meant to master, if you will. And some of them are very challenging for the people going through them. I know mine have been. And what that led me to understand even more deeply is that we cannot just be satisfied with the surface layers of life. We can't live shallow lives anymore, because we will get ourselves into trouble. And some of the troubles we can get ourselves out of, and some of them maybe we won't. Maybe they'll make us ill. Maybe they'll lead us to places we really don't want to go and don't know how to get ourselves out of. So
Do you ever wonder, here you are, this young child, somewhat conscious in a different way from a very, very, very young age. Ability to read before you went to school by 3 years old. Sidelined by your teachers just because you were such an odd duck. Sexually abused by your father. Moved around 27 times over how many years? 11 years?
11 years, yeah.
All of this is extraordinarily. You think, what if you had been born into a home with a caring mother and father, and you had the means, and you didn't move around, and you went to good schools, and and then you became an alcoholic who blacked out, and so all these things didn't really support your innate genius and ability. Probably suppressed a lot of those kinds of things. But here you are, you came out of that, you went through coaching school. And then did you start a coaching practice then?
I did. Once I completed my my physical and other recovery, it took about maybe a year and a half, I would say, to stabilize from the MS. I've recovered most things, most function from it. So now I've been in remission since then, blessedly, thank all that's holy, and began to build a coaching practice. And through the years of coaching different people, I developed an understanding of the way that I work is really different from a lot of other coaches, which is no surprise, really. I think it's
Yeah,
everything
really.
considered.
Yeah.
Because I really do work with people at the soul level. My attention goes right there. I look right, if I'm looking into your eyes, but I don't see your appearance. I see a soul inside of you. And that's who I'm talking to. That's who I'm trying to reach. That's who I'm eliciting. Any of my questions that I'm going to be asking is about that level. And so that
So,
lets us go really deep.
so what do you mean by soul? I mean, soul is one of those words that
Mm.
is, I often talk about being versus personality.
That's
So
close.
it's more the inner part of yourself, the aware part of yourself,
The
the more
aware part of
essential
yourself,
part of
the sentient part of yourself, the conscious you.
the conscious part of yourself.
The
Yes.
conscious you is who I'm
Yes.
talking to. That is transcends personality,
Yes.
transcends experience, and the mundane parts of our lives. It goes
Yeah.
into your heart, the heart of you, like who
Yeah.
you really are. And that's where I'm paying attention, and that's where I'm listening for to see, who are you? One of the first questions that I ask people when we start a session, and it took me a while to understand that I do have a process. Like people would ask, "What is your process?" And one of the things I start, like, "What's going on?" And then I listen to what they're telling me, and that leads to deeper and deeper levels of conversation if they're willing to go there. And most of the time they are, because one of the things that people have told me that I listen so closely and so intently, they've never had that experience before. That people, there's hearing and then there's listening. So
Yeah.
we talked earlier about something that one of the visions I have and that I hold is so dear to me is I'm here to create and support people who are working to create the kind of world no one needs to recover from. And I should know because I've got a lot of things to recover from. So I
Right.
know some things that will be helpful for people to stay away from activities that tend to generate those things. So I see things from a practical level. There's things that individuals can do, and there's things that we as a collective ought to be paying attention to. And those people who are beginning to wake up and look at that and work with them, those are the kind of people I like to support and I like to work with because they tend to be a little bit more conscious, a little bit more aware, not only of self-aware, but also societally aware. And you're looking at both the macro and the micro levels of existence. That's not something everyone can do, but there are some of us here who, that's why we're here. And that's the people I love to support and work with.
So when a client comes to you for coaching, they're referred or however they find you. What are they usually looking for?
Sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
They just know that something needs to change and they need some help. And they aren't sure where to look or what to do. A lot of times, like if a person is coming because they've got a business problem, we'll work on that, but we'll also work on how did you get here and what are you trying for? Is this really about this business problem or is there something else going on? And we'll find out. Maybe
Yeah.
there is and maybe there isn't, but we'll get to the truth because I'm always about what is your truth? Not what you think it should be, not what other people are telling you it is, but what is true for you about this. And let's look at that. Let's talk about that. That's where the gold is. That's where the joy and the life is. Because on the other side of that problem, there's enormous energy that's freed up. Just unbelievable possibility and potential.
Let's talk about that a bit because I find that very interesting. So ordinary people, everyday people that are listening to this, we have our patterns, we have our life, we have our problems, we have the things that we're kind of stuck in and lost in. we have the circumstances of our life, all of these things, and sometimes we're trying to work those things out. And you sort of get to the heart of the person. Who are you? What's your purpose? What's your meaning? What do you really want to do? And then, am I expressing this accurately? And then all of a sudden, that starts to come out, and new possibilities come out.
Well, we don't necessarily look at the overall purpose right away, but because you got to start with an individual truth. And, like, I'll give you an example. We were talking earlier about, just before the call, about how hard it is to deal with things that we think are supposed to happen. Like the call that we originally recorded. We had an interview and the technology just didn't work. So for whatever reason, what if we looked at that experience as an opportunity for something better? What if we looked at, and this is my growing edge, because this is something that I've struggled with my whole life, and I still am, and I think a lot of people are. You've got to deal with the disappointment, with the frustration. You have to deal with but I wanted that. Now I have to go through all these other things that I didn't want to do. It creates new challenges, perhaps, but if I look at this as a way to expand the potential, expand the power of what's possible, and step into that, there's something here that I would never have imagined. This recording that we're doing right now is going to be, I don't know how, but somehow it's going to be exponentially better. It's going to touch people in ways the other one didn't. And I don't know that. I can't know that now, but I have to believe it, that that's true. And so for me, the shift comes from feeling my feelings about, darn, that thing shouldn't have happened. I didn't want it to happen. I'm pissed that it went like that. And now I got to go through all these hassles and do all these different things that I really didn't want to do. But what if I looked at that like, oh, well, what if there's something beautiful here? What if there's something so wonderful I could not have seen it before? And this is now being just handed to me because I accepted what is. Accepting what is a hugely powerful step anybody can take. That doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean that you're surrendering, or giving up. It means that you're not fighting it. You're saying, okay, let me work with this. There's something here. Yeah. What if it's not like I thought it was? What if all my perceptions, what if all my things I think about it or want about it aren't true? What if I am not, even with as smart as I am, not smart enough to see it? Because I'm not God, I don't control everything. Who does control anything?
Yeah. So, Nancy, I'd like to hear some stories of people that you worked with, because I get the sense in an overview sense and the principles, but I think some stories would help clarify for our listeners the kind of work you did. Someone came to you presenting X. Yep. And you did what, and what happened?
Okay, I got a great one. This is my favorite one, and it illustrates perfectly the kind of work that I do and what happens when people work with me. First of all, a lot of times they'll say, one of the things that feedback that I get is like, I knew this was going to be different right away because things were happening that I've never experienced before. But this guy came to me, and his name was Steve. He was in a corporate kind of level job, and he was absolutely miserable. He was in a situation where his wife had a serious disability. He had responsibilities at home to take care of. The job was driving him crazy. It wasn't satisfying at all. It paid well, but that was about it. And it wasn't enough for him. The money was not the thing. And he was in such despair. He was very depressed. He just didn't know what to do about his situation. He felt absolutely stuck. So when we began coaching, I began with everything. Well, what's going on? And it turned out that he believed that he had his choices were only these 2 or 3 things, and he didn't want to do any of them. So working together, we gradually discovered what turns him on. Like, if you don't like doing this, what do you like? And led him to places where he could remember things that used to enthuse him, used to inspire him, used to turn him on big time.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
Then he was with the dilemma, well, how do I get back to that? Because I'm stuck here. Now what? So he's over here and he wants to be over here. That was a breakthrough, because he now saw that there was someplace else that was open potentially for him. And so we began to talk about, well, what would it look like? What do you think it would take to have some of that happen for you? And just begin to play. That is a key to get into the creative spirit, the playful spirit, instead of doom and gloom. You can always go to doom and gloom, but getting out of doom and gloom, it feels like getting your feet out of quicksand. You need some help sometimes. So like, all right, one more lift, do it just one more time, somebody to help you do that. Get to the place where you can say, I see the solid ground on the other side over here, and I'm going to get there. I want that.
Yeah.
And
what I call a vision.
If they began to develop their own vision, not something somebody told them they should have, or that they could have, like that doesn't matter what you could have. What matters is, what are you going to do to get yourself to the place where you want to be? And sometimes it takes a little help and brainstorming to figure that out. But the upshot of it is, he began to see gradually the pieces of his life that were possible to change. And even though they were scary, he took risks, began to take a few more risks that he had not been willing to take before. And he discovered that, in fact, he had more support and he had more resources available than he thought he did. And it was not anywhere near as difficult as he imagined it was going to be. And so he made some decisions, finally, was willing to take risks, a few more risks, and was able to put things in place to leave that corporate job that was killing him, killing his soul, his spirit. He sold his house, which was in a lucrative, was a financially well-off part of the country, and so he got a good price for that home. Moved to a different part of the country where it was the living pace was a lot easier, a lot slower, that supported his wife and his family much better. He did something that he had been wanting to do, but was afraid he could not do his whole life. He started writing. He had a degree from a prestigious school in writing, and he wasn't using it. He became, within 2 years, he became a published author. He's now got 3 books published. He is working on a 4th one. One of them was nominated for an award. His family situation is stable. His living situation is such that
he's making a living at writing.
He's retired now, but he's earning income from his writing. Yeah, his books are selling, and so he's not only a published author, he's a paid author as well, and that was deeply soul satisfying to him. He was at the other side where his vision had wanted him to go. He didn't know how to get there. He was afraid he could not get there. He was absolutely stuck. And by leading him through the process of understanding what his truth is and what his power to take action really is, not the illusions of what he thought he could not do, but looking at the truth of it, he could see where he had some way that he could get there. That's all he needed.
So is that kind of typical for clients that you work with? I mean, if you look at it in an archetypal kind of way, I'm in a place where I don't want to be. My family situation, my living situation, my work situation, all of that. You helped him create a new vision, tap into his potential
Yeah.
and what he wanted. And his whole life changed. I mean, he sold his
It
house, he
is.
moved to a different part of the country,
He did.
he stopped his corporate job. He made money on his house, so his new house didn't cost as much, so he had
Right.
more money.
Yep.
Sounds a little bit like my life when I, I moved from Palo Alto, the heart of Silicon
Yeah.
Valley, to the mountains above Silicon Valley in the redwood forest.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't that kind of angst. I kept my business, but I can see, it's a total 180-degree turnaround.
Well, it can be. That was one of the more dramatic
right
stories that I have. But the thing is, I call myself a soul mechanic. I come in when your check engine light starts flashing in your life. And I say, let's look under the hood here. Let's see what's going on. And that's why I ask those kind of questions. So we get the kind of tune-up that it takes for you to discover your own path. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, I may make suggestions. I have enough of coaching and life experience that I can make some, maybe some creative thoughts that I could share with you. But
Sure.
I'm going to probably inspire you to create those for yourself. That's my real job. I can say, look, here's some things that are possible. What direction you want to go with that? Always putting it back on the person to choose, because once somebody understands that you have the power to choose something different, you're off and running already. You're not so stuck.
Yeah.
You are aware, and that levels you up, just raises just enough that you have hope. You have the courage to take a few well-placed risks.
Yeah.
To make those changes that you got to make.
We were on a call last night. I did one of my Ordinary Visionaries live sessions, and there were just 3 other people on it. You were one of them. And I've been kind of looking at ideas for my, the format for this. Mm-hmm. Just remind them what you're talking about. And in that session, I got clarity about what it could be.
Excellent.
And I sat down and I created a new logo for it, and I knew.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah, I just did that, right? So for some people, it happens to me a lot, but it's like often I know I'm stuck, but that with intention and moving forward, always taking the next step, the next thing always comes to me. It doesn't take years.
No, it can happen in a flash, just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but often, I worked with a lot of clients that were stuck as well. So I definitely, I'm not getting clients. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to talk about whatever it is.
Right.
All coaches are dealing with some kind of stuckness. So you get into the essential part of a person of what their soul's desire is. And all of a sudden that releases enormous amounts of creativity, energy, action. The vision becomes clearer. Everything comes into focus. That kind of thing, right?
That's the territory we head toward. Yeah. Because something has to shift. Yeah, you can't stay stuck. That's the bottom line, and the more that we realize the potential that we have power, but we don't know it. We think we're stuck because we don't see that power. We don't feel it. We aren't experiencing it. So part of the work that I do with people is give them the experience of their own power, so they understand what it feels like to be effective at something, even if it's a small, tiny step, and it often is in the beginning. But sometimes those small steps, just like you were talking about, the thing last night, it was probably a seed. I don't know what led you to then open that door and expand. But we
had this small group, and me and 3 other people that were really smart, and I didn't even, I talked a little bit about my program, but other people are talking about other things. And I just went, I just love this conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was very open-ended, but people were talking about, here's something I'm looking at. Here's something I'm working on. So people are were not coming from, nobody was really in a stuck place.
Right.
We were already in this creative place.
Right. And here's, you said a magic word, Robert. The
Yeah.
magic word is I just love. When you say those words, you are stepping into your own creative field
Yeah.
and opening the door to inspiration. What inspires you? What it turns you on? What lights up your soul? And if people could just say that more often, you would lead yourself there. You'd lead yourself into something that would open doors for you. And then you got to step through the door. Like you had further actions you had to take.
Well, it's interesting. All these ordinary visionaries I interview, for the most part, a lot of them, at least in some area of their life, they're quite self-actualized. They've produced a lot of results.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone through a lot of difficulties. They've had a lot of breakthroughs. I'm not speaking to people like coaching clients that, I don't know what I should do. I'm stuck. I don't know. They're not those people.
Right.
These are people that are already producing results. And like you've gone through your transformation and through your difficulties over your life. And so we're sharing that kind of thing. But, people getting together that are already at that level. I'm already creating. I'm already making a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in what's beyond that, because it's not like, okay, well, I get to this step and now I've arrived and there it is and it's all over and I'm making whatever.
No,
who knows what's next?
It's always evolving. It's always emerging.
Yeah.
It's like, the scientists tell us the universe is always expanding. So, if we're part of the universe, are we expanding? Is our consciousness expanding? Am I allowing my inspiration to lead me into what's next? And that, the other thing you say, you're always asking what's next. You're asking us that. You're asking me that. And, I love those questions. Those are brilliant questions. Those open doors. And
they're really simple questions.
We should be asking. They're simple questions.
Yeah.
And yet, when we ask them, we open the potential for answers, for solutions.
Yeah.
We got problems? Well, let's start asking the right questions. And you ask what is next for beyond when you reach a certain level of self-actualization. How about community? Getting together in community and asking deeper questions. What could we do, for instance?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we could do? And you were asking me before the call, in creating the kind of world no one needs to recover from, what would that look like? Well, I can't answer that question for anybody but myself. I know what it probably would look like, a world I would love to inhabit, but I want community of people who are self-actualized to help create the questions that lead us and inspire us to do something that actually creates those worlds, create the steps, the action plans, the inspiration.
Right.
And I love some of the younger people coming along because they have wild ideas. And some of those ideas are very effective. And have you ever seen this guy? He calls himself, I don't know what he is. He's like, 5 years old, and he's got in a suit and tie, and he calls himself the kid president, I think.
He's 5 years old?
It's about 5 years old. He's got a suit and tie.
And he has a YouTube channel or something?
You got to go look at it. It's called the Kid President, and he is so smart. He's got answers for everything, and some of them are really good. So you should listen to this kid. So it gives me faith that we're going to solve these problems. But let's get together and find the way. Shall we?
Yeah. And, that's kind of the picture that's evolving for me out of Ordinary Visionaries. I've done the one-on-one interviews, and I've been struggling to find a group format. And we just had this amazing meeting. I thought it was amazing for me last night in that it was very, people were focusing on new possibilities and working with what we have and what's the next thing here. And there's this thing out there that I learned, and and
But
these are the conversations I've always wanted to have with people, and these are not the kind of conversations we have with our friends every day.
that's right. They're not
It's
everyday
just,
conversations. You talk about ordinary
yeah,
visionaries, and we're not talking about ordinary conversations. We're talking about extraordinary conversations. And we're living in a time of extreme transformation. We're getting support from the universe. I'm talking to different astrologers and people who follow these things, say that this window that we are entering right now, about 20-year cycle, is going to change everything. We are actually moving from a time where there is control and dominance by people who have selfish desires into a time where
I don't know anybody like that.
well, we're moving into a time where the voice of people with visions are going to lead us into creating a world that works for everybody, because it's going to be healthy. It's going to feel good. It's going to engage people in new and creative and sustainable ways. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but they really will be able to continue what we create now. So we're heading someplace beautiful, and people should be aware of this, and we should hold that very close to our hearts. And in the awareness of what we are doing as individuals and with each other, take advantage of the support that we're getting to create that right now.
Yeah. So on the call yesterday, I talked about this is kind of simplistic in a way, but it's a useful model. Mm-hmm. Our mindset is either constrictive, mm-hmm. which is something's wrong, nothing's working, this is bad, they're bad. It's just sort of this constrictive kind of place. And then the other place is what's possible. Here's the next thing. What could we create? And I've been really encouraged by Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, because it's what she brings to it as a human being is possibility, and working together and lifting people up. Now, people say, well, those are just, there's no substance to that, but that's really the heart of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
People say, well, we want to know your exact policies. And, there are policies that she's talking about that are in alignment with that.
That's it. See, that's the thing that people are missed. Like, when you are inspired, you create practical solutions. When you are in the joy of creativity, and when you want to connect with people at a heart level, you're going to do things. You're going to be the way that you need to be to create the kind of world no one needs to recover from. You're going to create a world of sustainable and beautiful solutions. So you can't get there. From my experience and from what I see, you can't get there when you're hating and when you're feeling bad and just angry all the time. Anger and blame and shame are destructive. They're the constrictive energies that fear produces. That's why the people on that side of the equation are continually hammering people with those messages. We do not have to listen to those messages. We have messages of our own, and we better be talking about them. We better be talking about what's possible, what is joyful, what is what would a world look like if everybody could fit into it in some place. There's a place for you. What if even the people that we hate or that we feel bad about, what kind of place would they fit into in a world that we didn't need to recover from? That's something that needs solutions. We have to solve that because they're not going away. I mean, the people on the angry side of things have said they want to do away with people they don't like. Well, that's not going to work. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it just won't.
Well, that's the kind of thing you hear from Trump. We're gonna round up all the.
We don't like you, so go away. We'll get rid of you. No.
Yeah, we're gonna round up all the evil immigrants and ship them out of here, and then we'll be okay.
That is not going to work. I'm
just
sorry.
insane.
It's
But
not
the
going to work.
fact is, a lot of people buy into that because both the constrictive and the expansive are, what's the word?
Well, they're natural processes. Like you breathe in and out. You actually do need both of them. You can't stop that flow.
yeah.
You need both breathing. You expand and contract. You expand and contract. Just normal. It's natural.
But both of those things are magnetic in their own way.
They are.
So if you're in a group of people that are blaming and angry and that kind of thing, it's contagious. That's
Well,
the word I was looking for.
you know what's more contagious? Love.
Yeah. Well, yes,
Love.
but hate is contagious, and so is love. So the love, expansiveness, workability. Let's figure this out. Let's find something that works better. And we
Well,
also have to remember that it starts with our day-to-day lives. We
yeah, it
look at
does.
this
It does.
big, nirvana life. We're far, we're a long way from that. But in our everyday life, and that's what you do in working with clients. You had that one individual. He had a constrictive, small
Yes, he did.
life that wasn't working for him in so many ways,
So,
and he saw a new possibility for an expansive life, a life in which he got to do what he'd always wanted to do, which was right. And
and
he
the way
lived in
you
a
get there,
place.
you get there by saying, "What would you just love? What would you just love?" And there's that word "love" again. Now, love does not mean never saying no. Sometimes love is saying, "No, we are not doing that." Like
Yeah,
Kamala Harris says, "No, we're not going back." That is also love.
yeah, yeah,
Love is not just all fluffy and airy fairy. It can be very firm and clear and true.
yeah. Well, her message and her being and her joyfulness, some people on the negative side, oh, she smiles too much. It's like, oh, give me a fucking break. She's inspiring people in a way that hasn't happened in a presidential campaign that I ever remember.
Right.
She's really lifting things up.
But even
And
if it weren't her, she embodies the energy of what's coming. What
yeah,
we're ushering in right now. This is what all the astrologers and the wise folks are telling us, that this energy is what wants to emerge. If we try to stop it, there will be trouble. And those people who are trying to stop it are causing the trouble. We don't have to follow them. We can follow a different path. And this may be a place where our paths diverge a little bit. That doesn't mean we get rid of anybody. It just means, what energy are you going to allow yourself to be
yeah,
part of?
yeah. So, I don't expect we'll all wake up one day in Shangri-La.
Oh, right. Right.
Evolution of mankind comes, but you look at the changes in humankind, and one of the big changes was the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
It brought good things. It brought a lot more abundance, but it also brought a lot of pollution.
Yeah.
It brought jobs that weren't very meaningful. Sitting at a loom 27 hours a day at terrible wages. So we have this balance of the dark and light, and a lot of those things have been corrected and worked through, and yet we're fighting for labor rights, we're fighting for reproductive rights, we're fighting for more meaningful jobs, we're fighting for a society that is overall better for most people.
Yeah, we are. For me, if I had to name it, I would say that we're entering the consciousness revolution. that is the one that's going to take us places we've never been, in really good places.
Yeah. But, obviously a lot of people have been talking about this stuff. I mean, I've been immersed in consciousness studies since I was 18 years old.
Yeah, me too.
I've really been interested in that, and have delved deeply into it and worked with teachers and read a million books, and
all the things.
A lot of people have.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that this is not airy-fairy stuff. It's the most practical thing in the world.
It's absolutely practical.
And for me, it distilled down into being an ordinary visionary, owning that we can have a vision for something, anything, many things, and take action to make a difference, to have things be better, work better. And, in interviewing these 60 or so people that I have over the last year, I've seen that that's all over the place. There's a lot of people, that's where their mindset is.
Yeah.
And they're looking for new, bigger, expansive possibilities.
Where is the playground? Let's find it. Let's create that.
And there's a million playgrounds.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be jaded by, we have two terrible wars going on in Israel and Ukraine, right?
Yes.
We have those
Middle
kinds
East.
of things going on as well. And yet there are people of real purpose, of real commitment, that are working to resolve these things. But you can't just go, oh, let's just not have war. I mean, because we have these dark forces embodied in particular people like Trump and Putin and God knows who else.
Well, Robert, one of the things that you're talking about here, and I know we're getting to the end of our conversation here, but one of the books that I've written that I'm working on getting published is called Healing the Wanting, Making the Shift from Grasping to Gratitude. And it covers a lot of things that we've been talking about today, but also what do you do about these existential dilemmas that we keep creating for ourselves? And how do we stop doing that? That's kind of the message that I want to be bringing. And I hope people really tune into that's not just them, it's not just this problem, but it's how we hold anything and how we choose to approach it, what we choose to do with it, and not just me, but we as humans. That's where we are right now. We're at the cutting edge of making some changes about that. And we have the power to do it. We have the support to do it now that maybe we never had. So in this 20-year window that I'm talking about, we have the opportunity to create something brand new that nobody ever thought of before. It's going to take time. Yes, it's not just an abstract thing. You can't just say, no, we don't want that anymore. Because they're individuals. And each one of these individuals have to make certain choices. And depending on what that is, will depend on which way, what happens. So it's not rocket science, but it is consciousness science, okay? That together, working together, we can find these solutions. And it's going to take people of heart and mind, people who are awake and aware and dedicated to engaging in these kinds of conversations and being brave enough, really, to say, let's try something and approach that in a community setting. Yeah?
Yeah. And that's something I want to be part of. And that's something I'm trying to initiate around Ordinary Visionaries Live, where we come together and talk about that kind of stuff and get inspired and see possibilities.
Yeah.
And move forward. So I guess I have to live at least 20 more years to see what happens.
I think we do. Let's make a pact that
I'm trying to stay healthy and in shape so I can.
Right. Let's hang in there and get it done. Get her done, by golly.
So this has been a fun conversation, Nancy. Very inspiring for me, because it's where I am, and I notice a lot of people are. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to lift things up. Yeah. We're being inspired by the new presidential campaign, And we'll see. I mean, it's only a month away. We'll see what happens,
Yeah.
and it's like there's forces fighting against that, and we want to try to sabotage the election again, and God, it feels like a war against light and dark. It's
Well, it
really
does.
interesting.
That old saying, like, which wolf are you going to feed? Don't feed the fears.
Right.
Feed the love.
Yeah.
Feed what is loving, and turn from what is not loving. That's another message my guides were giving me about 20 years ago that set me toward a slightly different path. Feed the love.
Feed the love. Maybe that's a good idea to wrap it up with. Yeah. How can you feed the love in your life, the expansiveness in your life, the connectedness in your life, the creativity in your life? All of these things, love holds them together.
Right.
So, now that we've solved all the world's problems in our... We'll see where this goes. Thank you so much, Nancy. It was really fun.
Robert. It's been a delightful conversation. I've been very happy to be here. I'm glad that we decided to do it over again. And, let this be a guideline for people. Don't be afraid to do it over again. Try something different and see where it leads you. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you.